There was only one person executed in the month of July. Keith Edmund Gavin, Alabama, July 18. Gavin was found guilty of killing William Clinton Clayton Jr. in 1998 and robbing him in front of a Regions Bank in Center, Alabama. He already had another murder conviction for a killing that happened 20 years prior to this one that brought him the death penalty. Clayton, a contracted courier with Corporate Express delivery systems, was shot and killed on March 6, 1998, just after 6:30 p.m., when he was seated in a Corporate Express van outside the Regions Bank in downtown Center. After completing his deliveries for the day, Clayton made a stop at Regions Bank to use the ATM to get cash so he could take his wife out to dinner. Out of the 4 people who saw the incident, 2 were able to positively identify Gavin as the gunman. In their depositions, Ronald Baker and Richard Henry Jr. stated that they were at a stop sign close to the Regions Bank and the court building in downtown Center when the shooting occurred. Baker and Henry reported that they witnessed a man exit a car, cross to a parked van on the street, and shoot the van's driver. Baker and Henry heard the gunshots and left the site right away, but none of them was able to identify the shooter. Larry Twilley testified that he heard a loud noise as he was stopped at a light, turned and witnessed a man brandishing a revolver, open the driver's side door of a van that was parked on the street, shooting the van's driver twice. After forcing the driver to the passenger's side, the gunman took the wheel and started to drive off. Twilley stated in his testimony that he observed something red and black surrounding the gunman's head when he first saw him, but that after the gunman left in the van and removed whatever he had on his head, he seemed to have very little hair. Twilley positively identified Gavin as the shooter during the trial. In early February 1998, Dwayne Meeks, who worked for the Illinois Department of Corrections and is Gavin's cousin, told the court that he and Gavin left their home in Chicago, Illinois, and proceeded to Cherokee County, Alabama, to pick up some females and simply to get away. Meeks claimed that after spending a weekend there, they left and went back to Chicago. Gavin intended to go back to Alabama in early March 1998 in order to find the woman he had met in February. Meeks stated in his deposition that Gavin promised to pay Meeks's travel expenses if he drove Gavin to meet the woman in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Meeks stated that he consented to drive Gavin to Tennessee and that they were joined by Meeks's wife and son, who was 3 years old. In court, Meeks stated that they departed from Chicago on March 5, 1998, arrived in Chattanooga early on March 6, and lodged at a Super 8 motel. Meeks claimed to have reserved 2 rooms at the motel, one for Gavin and one for himself and his family. The 2 of them drove to a nearby gas station to wait for the woman. When the woman failed to appear, Gavin wanted to go to Fort Payne, Alabama, so he could locate her. Meeks consented, but they traveled to Center in an attempt to find the woman after they were unable to find her in Fort Payne either. Meeks stated in his deposition that he and Gavin arrived in downtown Center on March 6, 1998 at around 6:30 p.m. He claimed that once they came to a stop at a crossroads close to the Regions Bank and the courthouse, Gavin exited Meeks's car and went up to a nearby parked van. Meeks said that he believed Gavin was going to ask the van's driver for directions, but when Meeks looked up, he saw that Gavin was carrying a gun and the van's driver's side door was open. Meeks claimed to have witnessed Gavin shoot the van's driver twice. He said that as soon as he saw Gavin shoot the van's driver, he left the scene and Gavin got into the van and pursued him. Meeks stated in his deposition that Gavin tried to stop him by honking the van's horn and flashing the lights. Meeks was afraid and claimed that after telling his wife what had transpired, they went back to Chicago. He also said that he told several of his law enforcement friends about the incident as soon as he got to Chicago. He said that after speaking with his friends, he came to the conclusion that Gavin had most likely been carrying the firearm that the Illinois Department of Correction had given him. After checking his house, he discovered that his gun was actually missing. Meeks said that he did tell his boss at the Illinois Department of Corrections that he thought the weapon had been used in a shooting in Alabama, but he did not tell law enforcement when he reported the missing gun. Meeks was interrogated in Chicago on March 9, 1998, and then on April 6 by Alabama investigators. Following the interviews, he was charged with capital murder in relation to Clayton's death. However, the accusation was later dropped. The district attorney's office for the 9th Judicial Circuit's investigator, Danny Smith, testified that on March 6 he was driving back to Center from Fort Payne when he heard over the radio about a shooting. Investigator Smith stated that he observed a van that matched the description broadcasted over the radio and followed it as he moved towards Center. He said the driver was moving erratically and the vehicle was going around 75 miles per hour. According to his testimony, the van turned on its blinker and stopped on the side of the road while he was talking about stopping it over the radio with several law enforcement officials. Smith said the van suddenly turned back onto the road and took off when he approached it from behind. He pursued the van further and noticed that it stopped in the middle of the road close to the junction of Highway 68 and 48 after he switched on his emergency lights. According to investigator Smith's testimony, the driver of the van stopped, got out, shot at him, fled in front of the van, turned around and shot at him once again before running into some nearby woods. The van's driver was dressed in blue trousers, a toboggan or other form of cap, and a shirt that was either maroon or wine in color. During the trial, Smith was able to conclusively identify Gavin as the individual who had exited the van and fired shots at him. Once Gavin ran away into the woods, Smith went to the van and examined the victim. The victim was barely alive, according to him, and he radioed for an ambulance. There was very little blood on the driver's seat, but when he initially arrived at the van, he noticed blood on the passenger seat and between the two front bucket seats. According to Smith, the individuals who had to enter the vehicle in order to secure and extract the victim spilled blood on the driver's seat as the victim was taken out of it. Gavin escaped into the woods, and shortly after, a number of law enforcement personnel showed up at the crossroads of Highway 48 and 68. They immediately surrounded and shut off the wooded area, making it impossible for anyone to escape and cross the road without being noticed. Then, agents from multiple law enforcement organizations searched for Gavin. Tony Holliday, a dog handler at the Limestone Correctional Facility, showed up at the scene with his beagle at around 9:45 p.m. According to the information Holliday was given when he initially arrived, investigator Smith had pursued the suspect for about 20 yards before coming to a stop outside the trees. In order to prevent the dog from following investigator Smith's path from the road and instead follow the route of the person who had entered the woods, Holliday claimed to have had investigator Smith show him the precise location where he had ended the chase. In his testimony, Holliday said that he then carried his dog to that location and laid him down. The dog detected a scent right away and followed it into the forest, ending up at a creek. Holliday testified that he observed a man standing in the creek under a bush that he positively identified as Gavin, and that Gavin tried to run away from him when he noticed him. He gave Gavin the command to halt, but Gavin didn't comply until Holliday shot Gavin in the shoulder. After handcuffing Gavin, a number of law enforcement personnel helped to guide him through the woods, up the embankment, and out of the creek to the road. Clayton was pronounced dead at the hospital. A subsequent autopsy revealed 3 gunshot wounds to his body caused by 2 bullets. One bullet passed through Clayton's left arm, entered his chest on the left side, damaging both of Clayton's lungs and his heart, and exited the right side of the chest. That bullet was later found lodged in the passenger side door of the van. The second bullet entered Clayton's left hip and lodged in his back. The wounds to Clayton's arm and hip did not bleed much because the bullets entered the muscles and the bleeding was contained inside those muscles. The wound to the chest bled quite a bit, and after blood filled the chest cavity, it exited the body at the lowest point. According to the record, neither bloodstains nor usable fingerprints were discovered on Gavin's clothing or in the van. Nonetheless, the state produced proof showing that, following Gavin's arrest, a motel room key, which fit room 113 at the Super 8 Motel in Chattanooga, where Meeks and Gavin had reserved accommodations, was discovered in his pants pocket. Furthermore, A red and black toboggan cap was discovered close to the woods by the intersection of highways 48 and 68. Two .40 caliber shell casings were discovered in the streets outside the Regions Bank in downtown Center, and one .40 caliber shell casing was discovered in the roadway at the intersection of highways 48 and 68. It was also discovered that the bullet in Clayton's back and the bullet lodged in the van's passenger side door were both a .40 caliber. A Glock pistol was located close to the woods where Gavin had been found on March 13, 1998, despite the fact that law enforcement was unable to locate the murder weapon the night of the incident. Gavin was found guilty of murder in Cook County, Illinois in 1982. He was only recently freed on parole, having completed about 17 years of a 34-year sentence before Clayton's murder. At the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Gavin, 64 years old, was executed by lethal injection, making him the third prisoner executed by the state this year and the 10th in the country. Since 1998, Gavin has insisted on his innocence, placing the blame on his cousin, who was present when the crime was committed. There were no apparent difficulties when the execution started at 6:16 p.m., according to the witnesses. At 6:20 p.m., Gavin appeared to have passed away as he had closed his eyes. He didn't seem to respond physically to anything during the procedure. "I love my family," was Gavin's last statement before he passed away. He seemed to pronounce a few Arabic terms as well. He had converted to Islam during imprisonment. According to the Alabama Department of Corrections, Gavin skipped breakfast, lunch, and dinner the day before he was put to death, but he did consume a bag of Ruffles cheddar sour cream potato chips, a bag of Lay's plain potato chips, and a chocolate Hershey bar with almonds. According to the prison department, Gavin did not make any special requests and declined his last meal on Thursday. He did enjoy a snack of some ice cream and some Mountain Dew. On Thursday as well, Neil Conrad and Daniel Epstein, Gavin's attorneys, paid him a visit and were among those who saw him put to death. There was another inmate scheduled for execution in July, Ruben Gutierrez from Texas Death Row. The proceedings were canceled 20 minutes before starting because the Supreme Court decided to grant him permission for post-conviction DNA testing at the last minute. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.